And the title of today's message is, has anyone seen my axe? I mean, who doesn't get that question from now and again, right? Has anybody seen my axe? Anybody know where I laid my axe? Did you steal my axe? But it's a story actually out of the Old Testament, out of 2 Kings chapter 6, and it's a prophet named Elisha. And Elisha, he was the predecessor to the prophet Elijah. And so Elisha has been doing incredible things. He's got the ears of many kings. He's predicting and watching God do the prophetic. And he is an incredible prophet in the Old Testament. And he has a school of prophets. And typically the prophets didn't have a lot of money. They weren't these very wealthy men. And they kind of had this thing about them where they were almost pride themselves on not having, but letting God provide for them. I mean, Elijah, the one who came before Elisha, he was fed by ravens, for years during this drought. And so there was these miraculous things, and everything they had, they wanted it to be a miraculous story of how God provided. And God would, over and over and over and over. And this story is no different. So Elisha had all this school of prophets, and Elisha, his reputation was growing. And as it was growing, there was more prophets that wanted to be a part of what he was doing, and so there was no longer a space for them. We know all about that, Palms, don't we? We know all about it. Outgrowing spaces and moving from space to space. We know it. But there was a school of prophets, and there was just no space for them. There was no place for them. And so they said, we need to build something new. And so they said, let's go down by the river, the Jordan, and let's build something new. Let's build something for this next phase, this next place. And so that's where the story takes off. And so in 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 1, this is what it says. It says, one day the group of prophets came to Elisha and told him, as you can see, this place where we meet with you is too small. So let's go down to the Jordan River, where there are plenty of logs, and there we can build a new place for us to meet. All right, he told him, go ahead. Please come with us, someone suggested. Okay, I will, he said. So he went with them, and when they arrived at the Jordan, they began cutting down trees. But as one of them was cutting a tree, his axe head fell into the river. Oh, sir, he cried, it was a borrowed axe. Nothing worse than losing your friend's tools, right? There's nothing worse than losing the axe. Where did it fall? The man of God asked. And when he showed him the place, Elisha cut a stick and threw it into the water at that spot, and the axe head floated to the surface. Grab it, Elisha said, and the man reached out and he grabbed it. Now, you might hear this, and it may not be an overwhelming understanding of why is this story so deep? Why is it so philosophical? What about this story is so pungent that you feel like I have to share it and I have to help you understand it and we have to tear it apart? Well, there is so many pieces to this story that are reflective of greater things, but the part that I want to get into is really the question that the prophet asks. And when he says to him, where did it fall? What he's asking is the prophets don't have money, and so this prophet, if he were to take an axe, essentially what's happening is that he was borrowing something that he couldn't repay. There was no way a prophet could. An axe was looked at as a very fine tool, a high-end tool, a very expensive tool. And so what was happening was that this prophet borrowed something from a friend that he knew he couldn't pay for if he were to lose it. And the term borrowed, it actually means to beg for. And so this prophet would have almost begged for, or he would have begged for someone to let him use this axe. Come on, man, I need to use your axe, bro. I can't afford an axe, and yours it's nice and sharp, and it's ready. You got this axe that I really need to use. Instead, he would actually begged for this axe. And so as you continue reading, it says that he starts chopping and the axe head flies off, right? And it goes into the water. Now, you're talking about the Jordan River. You're talking about something 100 feet deep, most likely, and it would have been moving pretty fast. And so the chance of finding an axe head would have been slim to none. And so there's this overwhelming sense that I was never going to get this thing back. And the bigger piece was that he knew that there was no way he could repay it. It would have been a minimum of a month's wages for a prophet to pay back and to give this man back his axe. Has anyone seen my axe? I think for us, there's things we've lost that are valuable, and I'm not talking about material things, but I think maybe there's things in your life. Maybe there's a peace that you've lost. Maybe there's hope that you've lost. Maybe there's joy that you've lost. Maybe there's some health that you feel like has been taken from you. Maybe there's things right now in your life that you just can't explain. And my question to you would be, where did it fall? Where did it go? When he came out and he told the prophet, I lost this thing, I need you to do something about it, Elijah said to him, okay, well, we got to start with the question. Where did it fall? And now this is the thing. The miracle that happened, God was going to do it regardless. You know, an axe head doesn't float. It's iron. These things don't float regardless. So the miracle was going to happen, but what he asked him is, where did it fall? And Elisha knew that it wasn't contingent on where it fell. It wasn't contingent on whether or not he reached out and grabbed it. It wasn't contingent on whether or not he even believed. Elisha knew that the miracle was going to happen, and he knew God could do it. But he's asking him, where did it fall? Because what he's wanting is, it's a bigger question. Where did everything go wrong? Where did the wheels come off? Where did the train begin to derail? Where did it fall? What happened? I love going back. I love looking at different times in my life, and I love kind of having that recap. Today I was driving back from a campground that we're at in the south side of Virginia Beach. Rylan, my second oldest, just turned 8. And I was coming back this morning at 5:30, and I had an album on by this great artist. His name is Dave Matthews, and he has an acoustic album with Tim Reynolds that I love, Live at Radio City. It's one of my favorite albums of all time, of any genre, and I love this album. But when I started listening to it, I was on my drive, and I recollected a time where I was listening to that same album in 2011, driving across mountains up near Culpeper, Virginia, where my wife and I lived, and I was driving from Culpeper to the inn at Little Washington on a 45-minute drive in a little Scion TC 2-door 5-speed. And I remember listening to this album late at night when I was coming home from my job at the inn at Little Washington as a valet back to my house, and I had Caden, who was my only son at the time. And I remember thinking about that time, and now here I am 9 years later listening to the same album at 5:30 in the morning, and it's still dark out, and I feel like I was only past Pungo. For those of you who aren't in Virginia Beach, it's kind of like another part of Virginia Beach. It's like the farm town, if you will, the more of the farm area. It doesn't even feel like it's in the same city, but I was driving from Pungo back to the oceanfront to my house, and I couldn't help but think of that same time, and I got to thinking, where did it all come apart? Like, why was I working as a valet at a place when God had all this? I'm not that incredible. Like, where did it all come apart? And I can tell you a million different things. I can tell you about fear. I can tell you about a resistance to the will of God in my life, because what he had for me wasn't what I had for me. I wanted to do ministry. I loved the Lord. I wanted to preach the gospel. I knew I was called. I just didn't want to do it in the ways that he designed me to do it. I can tell you about things in my life that I thought I knew, that I thought I could control. The wheels just came off, and I'm working at this place as a valet, which was great. It was fine. But God had me leading people. He had me pastoring. He had me speaking in the lives of people. He had me praying in faith. He had miracles happening. He had the unseen things in front of me that I didn't even know. And I was thinking today, where did it come off? And there was so many reasons, but what I could only look back and say is, God, you are so faithful. God asked me this question this morning: where did it all fall apart? Unfortunately, for a lot of us, we're asking this question right now because we're in that position where we feel like we can't find an answer. It just fell apart. The axe head went into the water, and we have no idea how to get this thing out. We have no idea how to fix this. We have no idea how to make this thing better. We have no idea how to get our peace back, how to get our marriage back. Some of you are ignoring the pain because you're hoping that it'll just go away. Some of you can't have a conversation with your spouse because you know that it will be the beginning of an argument. If there is anything in your relationship that has that much hold on it, you need to pray through it. You need to get with your spouse, and you need to say, where has this fallen apart? What has happened to us? For some of you, you're struggling for peace in your life. And you're trying to fill peace or create peace by things and stuff and friends. Listen, the people of God are great. Community is great. Your faith has got to be found with you and Jesus. You can have people encourage you, but you have to find the faith. Where did it fall apart? Where is the doubt that you used to not have about God come from? And some of you are in seasons where things are great. You're building in your life, and things are growing, and you're looking back, and you're having those moments of, God, I'm so grateful that I've listened to you, but is there anything that you can look at and say, man, I feel like something that I used to have, maybe a faith. Maybe I was crazier. Maybe back in the day I would have written a $5,000 check to something because I knew it was faith, whereas now I would never do that. I'm terrified. Whatever it may be, is there limits to your faith now? I pray this all the time. I tell my wife, I said, if I don't have miracle stories all the time happening in my life with people that I'm directly associated with, I want to know what's wrong with me. If I don't have God doing something miraculous, I'm saying something that only he can do. If I'm not having conversations with people outside of this place that I pastor, if I'm not in the community, if I'm not constantly having things in my life personally that only God could do, I want to know, well, what's wrong with me? Where did it fall apart? What questions are you asking yourself? The second question that Elisha asked Well, he didn't ask a question. He said, where did it fall apart? But then it says that the prophet showed Elisha the place. So there was he wasn't confused. He wasn't blaming the quality of the axe. Man, this is a junky axe, man. I knew I should have went to Lowe's. I found this thing at some junk store on the side. I should have went to Lowe's. They got the best axes, man. They got these nice axes, and I got this junky axe. No, he wasn't blaming people. He wasn't blaming leadership. He wasn't blaming his church. He wasn't blaming his bank account for not tithing and his church for not leading him. He wasn't blaming people because of the virus. He wasn't blaming his local church on whether or not he was growing in Christ. He wasn't blaming the friends and life groups because they weren't friends in life groups. He wasn't blaming his employer because he wasn't getting paid enough. He wasn't blaming his ability to swing an axe because the head fell off. He wasn't blaming the river because it was too deep or the water because it was moving too fast. He wasn't blaming the friend that he borrowed it from and thinking that I have to owe that friend and now I hate that friend because I owe that friend something that I don't have the money to owe him. He wasn't blaming people. He wasn't questioning the quality of the product. He wasn't questioning why they were even building a school in the first place because they could just cram more profits in the old school and just make do. He wasn't blaming everybody. You see how this works? He wasn't blaming his relationships and everything for his finances, and he wasn't blaming anybody for the fact that the axe head went into the water. He didn't do that, and that's where a lot of us get distracted. We have problems in our life, and we start blaming everything around us. So where did it fall? Where did it fall? It fell right there. This is where things came apart. And he wasn't, but then the next thing is like, okay, show me. Okay, I'm not going to blame people around me for my life. I'm not going to blame my spouse and my kids for the fact that I can't get mentally tight. I'm not going to blame anybody for the fact that I can't put it together between my ears. This is on me. But because he could show him where it fell, the axe could be brought back to the surface. You see, a lot of times the reason that God can't do in your life what you want him to do, and you're in this fight where you're getting hit from all these sides and these cheap shots, the reason God can't do what you want him to do is because you have no idea where it fell apart. You're so busy blaming everybody else for your problems, you have no idea what God actually wants to do because you have no idea you have no self-awareness of your spiritual place. Where did it fall apart? If your life is not where you want it to be, it's because you haven't led it to the place where God can do something great in it. He can do something great the minute you give it to him. That's it. But a lot of us get there, and then God's asking us to do things along the way, and we're like, well, excuse, reason, excuse. My wife ain't there yet. My husband ain't there yet. I don't want it to be like that. I don't want to be that committed. And we stay carnal. We stay doing stupid stuff and saying stupid stuff and living halfway in the world and halfway for God. And what I mean by that is your life looks like God half the time. The other time it looks like you wouldn't know the difference. Where did it fall apart? That's the question that if you could answer would fix a lot of the mess that most of us are in. But the bigger thing is a lot of us don't want to approach where it fell apart because we just want to leave that part of it lay on the side of the road and we'll just build something new and move on. That's not the way God works. Where did it fall apart? Now show me. Because in order to show God, you have to know. You have to be able to point. You have to be able to say it was right here. This is the place where things just started falling off in my relationship. This is where the things just started going crazy. This is where things just started, I started questioning you. I was good in April and May, but June came around and I hated everybody and everything. I just don't know how, God, in 2017, this event took place in my life and I've never fully healed. When did it fall apart? Well, God, when I was 7, I was sexually abused. Okay, when did it fall apart? God, my husband and I, we're fine, but then in the last year, we've just kind of grown distant. Okay, but when did it fall apart? God, I don't, when did it fall apart? What's this actually look like? Ask yourself the hard question, when did it fall apart? And be able to show God exactly where that is. And if not, ask him for the wisdom to show you. Show me where this thing is at. This is God's promise to us. God will restore everything that is lost. Everything. But he can't restore what you won't identify, and you can't show him what you can't identify. Some of us are so wrapped up in our personal relationships and licking our wounds so deeply that we do not have the time for people outside of our circle. I tell our pastors all the time. I tell them all the time. I say, listen, I'm glad y'all are friends. Don't make a living out of being with each other. We get to spend all of our eternity together. I said, I don't care if you hang out, but if you become best friends with every pastor on staff, I absolutely want to know, what about all the people you're leading? I tell our pastors this all the time. I said, I don't want a staff that we are best friends and hang out and we're each other's BFFs forever. I want us to be guys and women, men and women that love each other. We have great chemistry and we are each other's besties, but we don't need to be around each other all the time to know it. And we can go and reach people that have nothing to do with Jesus. Have them, I said, don't have me to your house. Have them in your house. If you're going to make a big night, we want to thank you for inviting me and my family. Invite the families of people you're leading. Don't invite me and my wife. Don't invite other pastors. Invite family. It's not a bad thing. I want our pastors, but I tell our staff all the time, don't make a living out of hanging out with each other. Go and get people that you're serving, the people that are captains and coaches in your ministry, the people that are in your ministry that you don't know. Go and get people outside of this circle. We have all eternity to kick it, but this isn't the moment. Why? Because we have to begin that process with people to help them see where it fell apart. We have to be the ones that help them see and show them where it fell apart. It's the thing that God has for every individual, but when we show him the place, he'll begin to restore. But there's something that the prophet had to do that I think is very interesting, because you have this axe head. It fell into the Jordan River 100 feet deep easily. It's flowing, and then he says, reach out and grab it. Now, let me ask you something. If God can bring an axe head from the bottom of the Jordan to the top, why in the world would we have to actually reach out and grab anything? Couldn't he float it right to the shore? What's the purpose? Why? If God could do that, God didn't need us to tell him where it fell in. He didn't need us to have a moment where we remembered anything. He could have just said, oh, my axe head fell. There's my axe. So grateful, right? No, God didn't need any of that information. He needed us to know the information. And he needs us to do the work. So when he says reach out and grab it, what he's saying is, I want you to be willing in front of everybody around you to identify where it fell off, to be able to point to that process and do anything. It doesn't matter. Every prophet right there was watching him reach in and grab the thing that he broke, the thing that flew off of his axe. Everybody in that circle was watching him reach down and grab his error. But what they were, and that could have been his mindset. Well, I don't want everybody to see me hurt. Oh man, if I hear that, that drives me nuts. When people say, there's so much pride in Christians that walk through pain, and they wonder why they never find their resolution. Because your pain and your pride is greater than the God who can heal it. I don't want people to see my pain. Well, then you'll never get healed. I don't want people to know my business, and they won't. And your business will stay your business forever. But when the prophet, the only prophet that had dropped his axe head, do you know how that's ridiculous even in 2020? You're chopping, the axe head flies off the tree and randomly lands in the water. Come on. That's crazy even now. And so this prophet in front of this whole school of prophets was staying there with Elisha, this man who was touted and highly respected in your authority. And he's staying there and he's making his Elisha help him get this axe head. And it floats. And he says, now reach down and grab it. Now what if you say, man, everybody already knows I lost it. And then, they already see it float. Can you just ask God to bring it a little closer? That's a little awkward. No, it's good, man. I got extra axe head in the truck. Just ask God to bring it a little closer, man. Come on. I don't want to reach down. I don't want to reach down. That's funny is that's the conversation a lot of us have with God. I did the miracle. I just need you to make me known, and that's just going to require you to actually reach down and grab it. I feel like all of us in our spiritual sense are toddlers. You know why I say that? Because toddlers have what we call alligator arms. They're not long enough. They can't even touch them above their head. Everybody who has a toddler knows it. And it's the cutest thing ever. You see, they lift their arms, yeah! Right, that's it. That's all they can go. And I feel like spiritually, that's the correlation. A lot of us were like, I'm going to reach. Right? That's about as far as it goes. And God is saying, can I please get somebody who is willing to hang on to a vine and get out into that water? It's 100 feet deep, 30 miles an hour, and reach with those little alligator arms as much as you can, just barely be able. If I just need you to show me your effort, and I will bring that thing right to you. But I know that if I don't do this for you, you'll never be able to walk in what I've got for your life. We avoid pain greater than we've ever avoided a virus as Christians, as people. People in general, we don't want people to know our pain. You know why it takes you a long time to tell your story after God does a miracle? Because your pride. A lot of people don't want, I'm just not, either there's pride or you're not through it. That's exactly what it is. Why is it? It took me a while to tell my story. Years. Why? Because I didn't want people to know my business. It's none of your business. Well, the funny thing was, the story has nothing to do with me. I didn't cause the story. I didn't create the story. But God is in the story. And so what I was doing is I was keeping people from his story in my life. You see, what happens is we protect our pain. And I'm going to go off social media. I'm not going to call anybody, text anybody. I just need time to myself. Great. You wonder why you're depressed? Because you sit in dark, lonely closets and you cut everybody off and you wonder why God's not moving. Because he can't. He can't move when you shut everybody off. They are in his form. Or the opposite. We're in the day and age of what we like to call keyboard warriors. Come on, somebody, right? They put everything they think and feel, but then they make excuses for it when you confront them. Well, I don't know if I feel it. I don't know. I'm going to like this picture and tag this picture and write this in here. And everything is this manipulative, back-breaking, dark, undercover. You don't have the guts to actually stay what you feel to the right people and do it the biblical way. So you go behind their back and do it to everybody else. And you wonder why you're still miserable and God's not doing miracles in your life, because he can't. Where did it fall apart? Show me. And the part where people know your story is when you're willing to reach out and grab it. Don't think your healing is over when you can't talk about it. I've heard people go through traumatic events and they refuse to almost say the word of what happened to them. They refuse to recognize their spouse. They refuse to recognize their boss. They refuse to, whatever took place in their life, they refuse. Why? Because they're not healed. Mental healing is not what God wants to do. He wants to do a spiritual reformation in your life that'll heal all of it. The mind is a powerful thing. But there's going to be a part God's going to say, I need you to reach down and grab it. I need you to reach out and actually do something with this. We have to know what's lost and where it fell. It's that simple. We have to. We don't get the option. You say, well, why can't we focus on the fight? I want to take, this is the first part of this. I want to take you into a story very quickly that Jesus was approached with. So I'm going to tell you how. This is the how. So you might think right now, well, why can't we focus on the fight? Well, why can't we focus on the fight? Why are we struggling? Why don't I know where it fell? And when I do know where it fell apart, why do I not know how to point to it? Like, why can't we focus on the fight? Well, it's very simple, because we let distractions help us forget where the axe head fell and why it fell. We let distractions around us kind of begin to create this thing in us where we willingly forget what the reality of our situation is. We actually think over time that this person is a good person because it's easier to think that than to realize how they've tried to destroy our life. It's easier to think they're a good person than to think about what they did to one of our kids. It's easier to think they're a good person the way they've trashed us to everybody around us. It's easy to think they're a good person to realize that they've had an adultery. It's easy to think that they're a good person. And it's not that they can't be forgiven. They can. They're God's children. But until you face the reality of your situation, you'll never know where it fell off. You'll never know how to deal with it. And you'll never have the courage to reach out and grab it, where your testimony is actually something you can share. I thought for years I was healed because I could share what happened to me. But what I did was I had become a professional with my emotions. I could tell you in the depths of what happened to me in my life, but I couldn't speak to you out of my spirit of the healing because I hadn't experienced it. I tell married couples this all the time. Talking doesn't mean you're healthy. Listening means you're healthy. Well, we talk all the time about everything. Yeah, and that's your problem. You talk all the time about everything, but you don't listen. You don't really hear. Talking doesn't mean you're healthy. Listening, leaning in and actually hearing what that person is saying. That's why in a fight, everybody wants to get the last word in, because it's not about health, it's about being right. And Jesus comes to this story I want to take you to. Jesus walks in to Capernaum, and this place it's staunch. You got to understand the religious time we're living in. The church was misusing all the funds. The Pharisees were the voice of the church, so people that were not of God were speaking for God. The church was misusing funds that were given to God, and they all represented Jesus, and they were a great misrepresentation of Jesus. And then they have the guts to come to him on Matthew chapter 17, verse 24. And it says, on their arrival to Capernaum, the tax collectors of the temple tax came to Peter and asked him, doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax? Isn't it interesting how people don't come to you, but they go to everybody else around you with problems? And it says, yes, he does, Peter replied. And it says, and then he went into the house, but before he had a chance to speak, Jesus asked him, well, what do you think, Peter? Do the kings tax their own people or the people they've conquered? And they tax the people they conquered, Peter replied. Well then, Jesus said, the citizens are free. However, so what Jesus is saying is, hey, I'm the king, so all the citizens should be free. So he's teaching Peter a principle of like, I'm the king. These men are taxing me because they refuse to believe that I'm the king. And they want me to pay their way of evil. They want me to pay the way of these false teachers. They want me to pay the way and do all these things that I'm not okay with. And he says, however, we don't want to offend them. That is the most interesting thing I've ever heard Jesus say in any scripture ever. We don't want to offend them. Why would it matter? Because these people are Pharisees. They're bigots. They're self-righteous, all about them, and they're not the heart of God in any instance, but we don't want to offend them. And he says, so go down the lake and throw a line in. Open the mouth of the first fish you catch, and you will find a large silver coin. Take it and pay the tax for both of us. You imagine the stress in this situation? What it's saying is, I want your entire year's tax right now. You have your tax for the entire year? Come on, pay it. The government's at your door. I want the entire tax right now. I want everything that you've got. But Jesus submitted to honor. He submitted and chose to submit because he wanted to honor. And you're saying, well, it was an evil authority. You're right. It was an evil authority. But Jesus knew that honor is something that when he does, it's going to help you honor the right authorities and the wrong ones. But he knows that if you don't get the concept of honor, you'll never fully be able to live for him. So it wasn't about the authority. It wasn't about the presidential election. It wasn't about the country that he lived in. It wasn't about the way that he was going to be mistreated. Because I don't know if you remember, but Jesus was murdered brutally, publicly, for something that he didn't do by those authorities. Not in Capernaum. It's all the same. All the same. But see, Jesus knew submission was a concept. Submission was a concept that was never about good and evil. But he was trying to submit. He was setting an example for us to show us how we honor, how we submit. But we have become so prideful in so many ways of our life that we feel like our opinions are God-inspired prophetic messages. And instead of honoring and submitting, we choose to fight. And what happens is Jesus knows that the dark part of that is that we fight him. You see, you can't just fight authorities. When you fight authorities, you fight all authorities. I have yet to meet a person who hasn't fought in authority and it equals every authority. You look in the New Testament, Paul didn't fight authority. He fought evil. You look at Peter, he didn't fight authority. You know, there's a reason that the disciples were brutally massacred, all except for John. There's a reason they all lost their lives as martyrs. They didn't resist authority. They preached Jesus. I think sometimes we forget that because we feel like we've got something to prove. We feel like there's a people, and this isn't just about an election. I want you to understand why Jesus didn't go against them and say, I'm not paying your tax. Y'all are misrepresenting the church. You have the den of thieves that are selling my stuff. You're selling all of my logos and all of my stuff in your temple, and you're making money off of me, and you don't even believe in me, and you're making a mockery of what my dad has built, and you're liars and deceivers, and you're taking advantage of women. I'm not paying you a dime because I'm the King of all kings, and I will just make this thing go away right now. But he doesn't. He honors them, and he pays them. And there's a couple of things why. One, Jesus, now listen to this, he didn't want to be a distraction to his mission. Jesus didn't want anybody to ever see him as anything else other than somebody that was honoring, respectful, and pursued people who didn't know Jesus. The temple worship and the penitence, the money that they made and the money that they took, this could have easily been a place for Jesus to stand and say, I've had no more of this. It'd be like somebody asking you for money and paying your taxes to do the very things you don't want them to do, which is what you feel like you do, a lot of you. You feel like the government takes your money and does things you don't want. Jesus says, pay your taxes. Why is the second reason? Well, he didn't want to distract from the mission, but he didn't want it to be a distraction of why he came. He wanted people to know, I came for you. Whether or not church government is crooked, he was required to pay the tribute. And the last reason was he didn't want to alienate people. Now, this is the big one for me. He wasn't for a politician, he was for people. He didn't want to alienate people by the way he stood for a certain candidate. He didn't want to shout the name of somebody and take the name of somebody else down. Not paying would have had differing opinions. If Jesus didn't pay that tax, people said, man, it's about time somebody stood up and told this government where to go and how to get there. But he knew it would have been divisive. You see how amazing Jesus is? He knew that would have been a divisive move and would have started putting people against the government. It would have started this rioting. And that's not what Jesus wanted. He didn't want this ruckus. Jesus didn't want this thing. But this is the problem with distractions. And right now, there's so many of us that are distracted. Distractions, now listen to me. Right now, where did it fall? When did it fall apart? Where is it at? We can't even get to the reach in and grab it, a lot of us. Why? Because we're distracted. What do distractions do? Distractions fight the wrong fight. And they miss the right fight. We're in a fight on these sidebars of life, and darkness is laughing. Because you're not fighting the right fight. You're fighting a fight you can't win. You're fighting a fight that isn't really even your fight. It's a fight for everybody else, or it's not a fight for anybody. There's so many fights that we are fighting that nobody is present in the room. The ones in your life that you need to fight are the ones that you've got to step up and you've got to actually look at it and you've got to sense that there is a God move and God doing something significant in your life and God doing something bigger than you ever thought. Why? Because this is the thing. Physical distractions are spiritual distractions. If there are things in your life that you keep getting physically distracted by, it's going to be a spiritual distraction. It's going to be things that you know aren't right. And when you lose the fight in your life, it's because we're facing the wrong way. If I stood like this all day and I'm preaching to y'all and I'm telling you everything that God is doing and I'm telling you about melee and it's this unorganized fight and today we're talking about, hey, has anyone seen my axe? You're thinking this dude is facing the wall. You'd hear what I'm saying and it would have some impact, but there's no face. There's no face with what I'm actually saying, and so you just hear me and you would hear me going off, but you can't actually see what I'm doing. You can't actually see my expressions because I could say Jesus loves you, but really be like this, right? Or I could say Jesus loves you. Y'all don't know the difference. If I'm facing this way because this isn't where the fight is, that you have no way of knowing where I'm really at. You have no way of getting a hand signal. You have no way of seeing how I'm responding to a situation. And this is how a lot of us are fighting. We're fighting and we're looking right here and there's the darkness behind us and this is the fight, but we're so worried about politics and we're so worried about darkness that doesn't exist in our life but in other people's lives, and we're so worried about the latest gossip that we've heard, and we're so worried about whether or not we're going to send our kids to school or do virtual, and we're so worried about whether or not church is ever going to meet again, and we're so worried about whether or not our husband's going to be with us. We're worried about all these things and we're fearful and we have no peace and we don't understand it, but right here is where you actually get your peace. This is where worry can't exist, because this is where you and God lock in and God begins to take that spirit of fear and it dissipates. And you don't sit and worry, but you say, God, I need wisdom right now. In Jesus' name, help me to walk in the authority I've never walked in and in a peace that I've never understood. Help me have a joy that's unspeakable and full of glory. Help me to walk under the influence in a way that I've never thought, but I can taste it, I can sense it, and I know you're up to something. God, help me to walk with the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Father, help me to lock in with my eyes and my spirit. Help me to sense your presence. Those are very different opinions and very different feelings and very different fights. But a lot of us, we're facing the wrong way. I'm going to tell you something about the season that we're in life right now, the place that we're all in. Don't miss it. Don't miss it. Don't miss what this season is building, because only this season can build it. This is the only season that can build it. There's no other way. There's no back alley. There's no side road. This is the only season that can actually build it. You know this song that I love, it's called Seasons, and the lyric in the song says, God, if you're not done working, then I'm not done waiting. And I love that. Because what it's saying is, God, I don't want anything that you don't have for me. I don't want anything that you haven't already pre-planned and pre-made. I don't want anything that you haven't put in front of me. You know, this August, the Lord spoke to me, and it was very clear that he said, hey, for Palms, I want you guys to be an online church that will have a physical location, but from here on out, you're an online church. Forever. You're an online church that will have physical locations, but don't think of it as you're a church that will do an online service, because that's not what I'm calling you to. Like, okay, well, what does that even look like? As we began to pray, it was very clear that God was saying, hey, I've given you everything you need, and thank God we planted that campus. We had all the equipment, all the stuff, and here we are. And at the turn of the year, we're going to see what God has. But I've seen so many people, and I have a lot of pastor friends, they're asking questions, and they're like, how do we do this? How do we do that? And some of them are meeting. Most of them, all of them are meeting. And I think something about our church, if you're new to Palms, is that we've been gypsies from the get. We're 6 years old. We have an office, which is what we broadcast out of, but we don't have a physical building. And we've had, even in this last season, we've had a lot of opportunities for a building. We had opportunities to purchase, and everything just kind of fell through. It didn't feel right. I didn't have a peace about it. I felt like the Lord saying, not yet. This isn't the right time. Trust me. So we didn't. And what I can tell you is that I know that right now I'm sitting in a sweet spot as your pastor, and this church is sitting in a sweet spot. And I'm not saying this to explain, because quite frankly, I don't really hear a lot about anything. I'm telling you this because right now, this is our sprints at night. Palms, I'm telling you. You remember in January what I told y'all? I said God's creating a remnant. I told you that at the beginning of the year, and I had no idea what was coming, but here we are. Here's the remnant. And we're sprinting at dark right now. And God is creating something in you that the world will know about come spring. We're in for a couple of rough months. I'm going to tell you what I feel like the Lord, I don't want to say that he spoke this, but I'm just going to tell you what I sense in my spirit. I feel like coming into November, especially after Thanksgiving, through December, I feel like the months are going to get dark. I feel like January is going to be a very dark month. But I feel like February will start to feel the light, and I feel like this spring we're going to start to see God do things in ways that we've never imagined. This is just what I sense in my spirit, and I've sensed it for the last really 5 months. Whether stuff closes back down here in a couple weeks, I don't know. But what I know is the church has never closed. We just left the building. And I can't tell you how proud I am of the people in this room right now. I was talking to TC, one of our video guys, and if you don't know TC, you're missing out on life. And I said, man, don't tick us off. We'll do anything. And he looks at me, he's laughing because he knows he's been here the whole journey. We were shooting with the phone, and now we're completely online, multiple channel network, all kinds of stuff. And this is the thing. When God calls you to something, you got to just run sprints at night. Who cares what everybody else says? Who cares what everybody else is doing? I have pastors look at me, man, y'all had meets physically? I'm like, no. I was like, we don't have a building. Why would I invest 100% of our mobile budget on 30 or 40% of the people? That makes no sense in any, if you want to talk business, but as a pastor, I don't invest 100% of anything in 40%. That's an awful number. It's like, why would I do that? We have people online. We're not doing that. I was like, secondly, that's not what God's asked us to do. I was like, for us, and I will tell you this, the hardest thing I've ever had to do as the pastor of Palms Church is to stay steadfast on this vision. And I'll tell you why. I miss you. I miss seeing you. But I feel like by doing this, I'm taking God's legs out from underneath of him, because I know what he's asked our church to do. And I know that he's asked us, will you run sprints at night right now? Will you get on that and get online and just run sprints for me and reach people? You know why I love it? Because there's so many of you right now online that you never would have been to Palms had we not done this. So welcome. So grateful that you're here. There's so many of you that this is your home church now, and it's happened in the last couple of weeks, in the last couple of months. Thank you for being here. If we hadn't put all of our effort into this platform wouldn't be what it is. And what I'm trying to tell you is, for us, I can't tell you what God's vision is. God's vision for the church is different for each church. And God's vision for Palms Church is that this fall, this is where we're at. We're here till 2021, probably till February, March, April, whenever the sun starts to shine again. But this is what I'm going to promise you. We're not leaving you. We're here every weekend. We're doing Wednesday lives. We got a marriage conference coming up. We're going to do some fun things. We're going to connect. We have our life groups, our groups that are going to be happening. We got outreaches that are going to be kicking in even more. We're going to continually provide opportunities for you to be with people physically, but this is where we're at right now. And I'm telling you, if you are not locking into this season, it's not because God's not big enough. It's because we put the phones down. It's because we've turned the TVs off. It's because we've decided at night I'm too tired to run the sprints. And I promise you right now, there is a remnant that God is creating here at Palms that is going to carry people in a place you've never imagined before in your life. And that is a word from the Lord. And I'm trying to help you see right now that right now in your life, I need you to stop and I need you to say, where is it falling apart? And where do I go from here? And be willing to reach out and grab that axe. To know that when God says, I need you to reach out, it's not about what you look like or what you feel like, but it's about being faithful to what he's asking us to do. I've never been more excited to watch people's lives than I have right now. We've gotten more testimonies and more victories. And I hear of God doing more things, not because we're not meeting physically, but because I believe many of you are locking in spiritually in a way that you've never felt this desperate. We're here. But what I want you to know is that there is a God who says, listen, I have a season, but I need you to just wait. If you haven't been a part of this Melee series, I want you to go back and watch them because they all tie in. And God is doing something spectacular in your life. For some of you, you're saying, man, I don't know Jesus. I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to know him. But before I do, we have prayer rooms right now that are available online. Our moderators are shooting a link into the comments. We have people on our prayer team that are waiting in virtual rooms. They want to pray over you specifically. No matter what it may be, it could be somebody in your family, it could be you, but you're saying right now I just need strength. Listen, we have people in prayer rooms all over the place. Jump on this link, click on it right now, and they're going to take you to a prayer room, and they're going to pray over you. They're going to pray over your life. They're going to pray over your need. They're going to pray over the things that's going on. Don't hesitate. Listen, being prayed for has never been easier, and I promise you the effectiveness is the same. I want you to jump on there, click that link, and jump into these virtual prayer rooms. We'll have somebody waiting to pray for you. But those of you who don't know Jesus right now, I want you just to say this, because he loves you and he died for you, and he would do it all over again if he had to, but he doesn't. He is the resurrected King. I want you just to say, dear Jesus, come into my life. I believe that you're the Son of God, and today I choose to live for you. In the precious name of Jesus, amen. And if you said that prayer, let us know in the chats. Just type me, because we want to walk this journey with you. We believe God is doing something incredible in your life. Listen, we are not standing still. We are moving faster and harder than we've ever moved. I want to encourage you to be a part of the giving, be a part of praying, be a part of serving groups and outreach, be a part of what God is doing here at Palms Church. I promise you that the best is yet to come, but we are running sprints at midnight right now, and I wouldn't be a good pastor if I didn't tell you what I know God is speaking to me. I'm asking you to lock in, to batten down the hatches. Don't ignore the reality of what's around us, and know it's going to get dark, and there's some things that are happening, but I promise you that for Christians, we want it to get dark to a degree, because that's when we become light. We become light when it's the darker that it gets. We don't wish death on anybody. We don't wish pain on anybody, but darkness doesn't scare us. It's our opportunity to step in and be the answer that God has for this world, and be the answer that he has for a troubled country, and be the answer that he has whenever people are sick and they need healing. We are his hands and feet. And so as it gets dark, we become brighter because we are the light. Would you stand wherever you're at? And I'm going to pray over you, and I'm going to believe today for the miracles. I'm going to believe today that God's going to help you see where it fell off and where things don't make sense, knowing that his hand is on you, that he loves you, that he's going to guide you and protect you, and that he sees you. He sees your need. He heals you and hears your pain, and he's going to do what only he can do. Father, I pray right now for each and every person. I pray that they would sense your presence. They would know that you're there. They would know that your hand is on them, that God, you would do what only you can do in them, and they would have a peace that passes understanding. They would be overwhelmed with all that you are. In Jesus' name. Come on, let's sing this very quick as a declaration for all that God is doing. I love spending time with you. Let's take a minute and celebrate. Come on. good God we serve. Listen, we love you so much. If you want prayer, click on that link, go to the virtual prayer room. If you gave your heart to the Lord today, type in me in the comments. Listen, we'll see y'all Wednesday. God isn't done. He is moving so fast and so hard. Let's run those sprints at night. I love y'all.
Man, what a powerful message, and what a powerful series. Just really giving us tools to fight that spiritual battle. I think sometimes we try to fight a spiritual battle with physical things, and this series really gave us some tools, gave us some perspective, and gave us some challenges on how we can really fight those spiritual battles. If you guys have missed any of those messages, I implore you to go back on and watch them. You can see them on our YouTube channel. You can go onto our website, Palms Church Online, and see any of those messages and replay them. If you've already seen it, maybe you watch it a second or third time, maybe even a fourth.
Check it out as many times as you want. That's what they're there for. Yeah, sometimes you just got to learn how to fight, and it's a process. Learning is a process. You don't always know, but learning how to fight is where you grow, where you get that character that only those fights can give you. Well, hey, maybe you want to connect today. Maybe you want to talk a little bit more about the message, or just connect with somebody after service. All you've got to do is go to our Palms Anywhere Facebook group, and we have prayer, live prayer for you if you would like that, and also just a place to chat and connect and talk about the message from today. Maybe just connect with people just like you would in a church lobby, no different. You can do that at Palms Anywhere on our Facebook page.
Love that, Palms Anywhere. And if you would like to give, you can do it a couple of ways. You can go onto our website, palmschurchonline.com, and you can go to the giving tab, and there's a way you can give right there, or you can text it in, the easy way to do it. You can text it in. You can text 84321, give in the amount, and it's as simple as that. That's the way you can give online and through the text.
Hey, that give in the amount to 84321, that's the easiest way to do it. You definitely want to try that one. Well, hey, we hope you guys have a great week. We love you guys so much. Have fun. Have a good week. Keep your heads up, and we'll see you next time.